My name is Allison Morgan, 28 years old, and I thought I understood my place in our family. That Sunday dinner changed everything. I can't wait for our cruise next month, I said, reaching for the mashed potatoes. My sister Rebecca snorted, "Oh, you thought you were coming." Dad grinned, adding, "It's for real family, Allie." Their laughter cut deep. But I just nodded and helped clear the plates. They had no idea what was coming next. If you're watching this, drop a comment telling me where you're from. Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about family dynamics gone wrong. I've always been the responsible one in the Morgan family. While my siblings received financial support well into adulthood, I worked 2 jobs to put myself through college, graduating with a marketing degree and only minimal student loans. That accomplishment came with zero fanfare from my family. My position as the marketing coordinator at a travel agency finally gave me some stability after years of struggling. I live in a modest 1-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood of Boston. Nothing fancy, but it's mine, and I've been saving diligently for my future. Every month, I put aside money for retirement and a down payment on a house someday. My parents never understood this approach, constantly questioning why I waste money on rent instead of just moving back home like Rebecca did multiple times. Rebecca, my 32-year-old sister, has always been the golden child. Despite dropping out of 3 different college programs and bouncing between jobs, she receives unwavering support. Dad paid off her credit card debt twice. Mom regularly takes her shopping. When Rebecca needed a new car last year after totaling her previous one while texting and driving, my parents contributed most of the down payment. All this while they declined to help me repair my 12-year-old Honda when the transmission went out. Then there's my brother Kyle, 30, who typically allies with Rebecca. He works for my dad's construction company, a job secured without an interview or any relevant experience. Kyle isn't malicious like Rebecca can be, but he follows her lead to maintain his own comfortable position in the family hierarchy. He'll occasionally text me when he needs advice about his finances or relationship problems, then go right back to excluding me when Rebecca's around. My parents established this dynamic early. When I brought home straight A's, the response was, "That's expected." When Rebecca or Kyle managed a B, there were celebrations and rewards. Family photos prominently display their sports trophies and theater performances. My academic achievements gathered dust in a box in the attic. Despite this treatment, I continued showing up. I brought dishes to every family gathering. I remembered everyone's birthdays with thoughtful gifts, even when mine passed with only a belated text message. I listened to my mom's complaints about her neighbors and my dad's endless stories about his glory days on the high school football team. I remained the dutiful daughter, hoping that someday they would see me. The cruise announcement came 6 weeks ago during a family barbecue. Dad proudly proclaimed he had booked a 7-day Caribbean cruise to celebrate their 35th wedding anniversary. Everyone seemed excited, and I genuinely shared in that excitement. I even offered to help with the bookings through my employee discount at the travel agency. Dad happily accepted, and I spent hours of my personal time arranging the perfect package, cabins, excursions, and dining options. Not once during those weeks of planning did anyone indicate I wouldn't be included. We discussed room arrangements, shore excursions, and even what formal wear to pack. I used my connections to secure upgrades and perks at no additional cost. My boss even gave me special permission to apply my employee discount, something usually reserved for personal travel only. This wasn't the first time I'd been excluded, though it was certainly the most blatant. Last Christmas, I discovered everyone had exchanged gifts on Christmas Eve while I was working a late shift. By the time I arrived Christmas morning, the festivities were largely over. For my birthday last year, they scheduled a spontaneous family trip to a lake house the same weekend, then acted surprised when I mentioned the conflict. But being told to my face that I wasn't real family, that was a new low. The Sunday dinner that changed everything started normally enough. I arrived at my parents' suburban home at 5 p.m. sharp, a bottle of expensive Cabernet in hand. I had spent almost $100 on that wine, a significant splurge given my careful budget, hoping it would complement the pot roast my mother had mentioned she was preparing. The house looked the same as always, immaculately maintained outside with my father's precisely trimmed hedges, and cluttered inside with my mother's collection of porcelain figurines and family photos. I noticed again how few of those photos included me. "You're just in time," Mom called from the kitchen. "Rebecca and Kyle are already here." I found my siblings in the living room, Rebecca sprawled across the couch scrolling through her phone. Kyle watching a basketball game on the large TV our parents had bought last Christmas. "Hey, Allie," Kyle said, not looking away from the screen. Rebecca barely glanced up. "Nice of you to finally join us." I'd arrived exactly on time, but I let the comment slide, as I always did. "I brought wine," I said, heading to the kitchen. Dinner began pleasantly enough. Dad carved the roast, Mom proudly presented her garlic mashed potatoes, and I poured the wine for everyone. The conversation flowed around work drama, neighborhood gossip, and Kyle's new girlfriend. "So, Allie," Mom said during a lull, "how's work going?" It was the opening I'd been waiting for. Work had been especially stressful with year-end reports. But the cruise planning had been a bright spot. "Actually, things are really busy, but I'm excited about next month. I've been researching those snorkeling spots in Grand Cayman for our cruise. The coral reef preservation area is supposed to be amazing." The sudden silence felt heavy. Rebecca snorted, not even trying to hide her amusement. "Oh, you thought you were coming," she said, exchanging glances with Kyle. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. "What?" Dad chuckled, setting down his wine glass. "It's for real family, Allie. You know, the four of us. The four of them. Not five. Never five. But..." I struggled to understand. "I've been helping with all the bookings. We talked about the excursions together." "Yeah, we needed your discount," Rebecca said, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "That's why we had you make the arrangements." Mom shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Kyle suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes. "I see," I said quietly, though I didn't. "Not really." Rebecca laughed. "Did you seriously think you were invited?" "God, that's sad." Dad joined in her laughter, shaking his head. "We appreciate the help with the bookings, though. Saved us a bundle." I felt as though I'd been slapped. The room seemed to tilt sideways, voices becoming distant as blood rushed in my ears. Yet somehow I maintained my composure. "Years of practice, I suppose. Could you pass the green beans?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Dinner continued. They discussed their packing plans, the weather forecast for the Caribbean, and who would be taking care of the mail while they were gone. I sat there, mechanically chewing food I could no longer taste, nodding at appropriate intervals, and dying inside with each passing minute. When dinner ended, I stood and began gathering plates. "Leave those." "Honey," Mom said. "You worked all day." "It's no problem," I replied, continuing to stack dishes. I needed something to do with my hands. Some reason to keep my back to them so they wouldn't see my face. In the kitchen, I ran water over the plates, the sound masking my shaky breathing. Through the doorway, I could hear them continue discussing the cruise, their voices animated with excitement. "I'll take the good sunscreen," Rebecca was saying. "The kind that doesn't make your skin feel greasy." I drove home in silence, no radio, no podcast, nothing but the sound of my own thoughts. The tears didn't come until I was safely inside my apartment, door locked behind me. Then they wouldn't stop. I slid down against the door until I was sitting on the floor, sobbing in the darkness. I cried for the little girl who had always tried so hard to earn love that should have been freely given. I cried for the woman who still showed up, still hoped, still pretended that the next time would be different. That night, I barely slept, replaying the dinner conversation over and over. Real family, Dad had said. After 28 years, countless family dinners, holidays, and celebrations, I was still somehow not real family. By morning, something had changed. The hurt remained, a physical ache in my chest. But alongside it grew something new, anger. White-hot, clarifying anger. Monday morning arrived with swollen eyes and a headache that pounded behind my temples. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years, unable to face people or pretend everything was normal. As I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Thanks for your help with dinner last night. Dad loved the wine." No acknowledgement of what had happened. No apology. Just more of the same dismissal I'd experienced my entire life. I didn't respond. Around noon, I finally showered and made coffee. My laptop sat on the kitchen counter, still open to the cruise, booking confirmation emails from last week. That's when it hit me, everything was still in my name. Every reservation, every confirmation, every detail had been arranged through my work account and my personal email. I had organized the cruise package using my employee discount, which required me to be listed as the primary contact. My father had provided his credit card for the deposit, but the remaining balance wasn't due until final confirmation, 72 hours before departure. The system was designed this way to allow for last-minute changes. I stared at the screen, a plan forming. It would be so easy. Too easy, perhaps. For the next hour, I scrolled through years of text messages, emails, and photos, cataloging a pattern of exclusion and thoughtlessness that I had normalized for too long. The birthday parties I wasn't invited to. The family vacations planned when I couldn't attend. The group photos where I was relegated to the edge, easy to crop out. And now, the final insult, using my professional connections and personal time to plan a family vacation I wasn't welcome to join. Real family, Dad had said, the words still burning in my mind. I opened my work portal and reviewed the booking details. The cruise was set to depart in 3 weeks. The remaining balance would auto-charge to my father's card in 18 days. All excursions, dining reservations, and cabin assignments were confirmed, but remained fully modifiable by me as the booking agent. What if I did nothing? Let them enjoy their cruise. Come back to more Sunday dinners, more exclusion, more pretending? The thought made me physically ill. Or I could confront them, tell them how deeply they'd hurt me. But I'd tried versions of that before. My feelings were always minimized, my perceptions questioned. "You're too sensitive," they'd say. It wasn't like that, they'd insist. Even when it was exactly like that. I picked up my phone to call my therapist, then set it down again. I already knew what she would advise: healthy boundaries, direct communication. Perhaps even distance from toxic family dynamics. Reasonable, measured responses that had never worked with my family. What I needed wasn't reason. It was justice. I created a new folder on my desktop labeled Family Cruise and began making copies of all confirmations and communications. Then I researched the cancellation policies, modification procedures, and timing requirements. As an employee, I had access to back-end systems most customers never saw. The plan emerged with surprising clarity. I would wait until the last possible moment, then reroute everything. Not cancel. That would trigger immediate notifications. Instead, I would modify, change dates, switch names, rearrange details just enough to create confusion without alerting them prematurely. I requested 2 weeks of personal leave from work, citing a need for mental health time, something my understanding boss had encouraged employees to take when needed. I scheduled it to coincide with the cruise dates, ensuring I wouldn't be at the office when everything unfolded. Next, I researched remote cabins within driving distance. I found a perfect spot in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, no Wi-Fi. Spotty cell service, but breathtaking views and complete privacy. I made a reservation for the entire cruise week. I set up email autoresponses and timed text messages to create the impression I was simply taking a much-needed break from everything, including family communication. I even arranged for a neighbor to collect my mail and water my plants, as I would for an actual vacation. Each step of planning brought a strange sense of calm. For perhaps the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting to my family's behavior. I was acting on my own behalf. The final piece fell into place when I discovered I could redirect all notification emails to a secondary account I controlled. This meant any automatic updates or confirmations would come to me first, not to my father or siblings. As the day of execution approached, brief moments of doubt crept in. Was I really going to do this? Was I becoming the vindictive person they had always painted me to be? But then I remembered Sunday dinner, the casual cruelty, the laughter at my expense. Yes, I was really going to do this. After a lifetime of turning the other cheek. I was finally going to show them exactly what happens when you push away the one person who has always held everything together. The night before I was set to implement my plan, I sat alone in my apartment, a glass of wine in hand, and made a toast to the new Allison Morgan, one who would no longer accept being treated as less than family. The White Mountains cabin exceeded my expectations. Rustic yet comfortable, it sat nestled among towering pines with a view of the valley below that took my breath away. The owner, a retired park ranger named Bill, gave me a brief tour before handing over the keys and heading back down the mountain. Cell service is spotty at best, he warned. There's a landline for emergencies, and I'm just 15 minutes away if you need anything. Perfect. I didn't want to be easily reachable. I spent the first day hiking nearby trails, taking photos of wildflowers and breathing air that felt cleaner than anything in Boston. I deliberately kept my phone off until evening, when I returned to the cabin and prepared a simple dinner. Only then did I power up my phone and connect to the cabin's minimal satellite internet service. As expected, the family group chat had been quiet. They would be leaving for the airport the next morning, blissfully unaware of what awaited them. I opened my laptop and logged into the travel agency system for the last time before the chaos would begin. 3 days earlier, I had implemented the final phase of my plan. I had changed all reservations to start 1 day later than originally booked. I had switched the names on the bookings, making my father the companion rather than the primary traveler. I had rerouted the confirmation emails to go only to my alternate email account. I had placed a temporary hold on the credit card charge, citing verification needed. None of these changes would become apparent until they arrived at the airport, ready to check in for their cruise. The next morning, I made coffee and sat on the cabin's porch swing, watching the sunrise paint the mountains in gold and pink. I felt oddly peaceful, knowing that right about now, my family would be arriving at Logan International Airport, luggage in tow. Excited for their luxury vacation. At 9:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. Then again, and again. The family group chat had exploded. Dad, there's a problem with the reservation. They're saying it's not in the system for today. Mom, what do you mean? We confirmed everything weeks ago. Rebecca, this is ridiculous. We've been standing here for 45 minutes. Kyle, has anyone called Allie? She handled all the bookings. Rebecca, she's not answering. Of course. The messages continued as their situation deteriorated. The airline had no record of their flight for today. The cruise line showed a reservation for tomorrow, not today, and indicated the payment hadn't been processed. Dad, they're saying the credit card verification failed. Something about the primary traveler not being present. By 10:30 a.m., their panic was palpable. Photos showed them huddled around the airline customer service desk, my father's face red with frustration, my mother looking tearful. At 11:15 a.m., my phone rang. Dad, I let it go to voicemail. His message was a mixture of anger and confusion. Allison, there's something wrong with the cruise bookings. We need you to call the travel agency right away. We're stuck at the airport and nobody seems to know what's going on. More calls followed. Mom, Kyle, even Rebecca. I silenced them all. Watching the family chat continued to document their growing crisis. By noon, they had realized they would miss today's departure. The airline offered to rebook them on tomorrow's flight at an additional cost, but that would mean missing the cruise ship's departure as well. Dad, this is going to cost thousands to fix. I don't understand how everything got so screwed up. Rebecca was the first to connect the dots. Has anyone heard from Allie since Sunday dinner? When we told her she wasn't coming with us. Kyle, you don't think. Mom, she wouldn't do something like this. There must be a mistake. But Dad wasn't convinced. I'm calling her boss at the travel agency. That wouldn't help them. I'd already spoken with my supervisor, explaining I needed personal time due to a family situation and would be unreachable. The company's privacy policies would prevent them from making changes to bookings without proper authorization, which only I could provide. By evening, the family chat had become a battlefield. Rebecca was posting furious voice messages, her words slurring slightly, suggesting she'd been drinking. You did this on purpose, didn't you, Allie? Always the victim, always so perfect. Well, you've shown your true colors now. Dad's out thousands of dollars and Mom hasn't stopped crying. I hope you're happy in whatever hole you're hiding in. Kyle's approach was more measured. Allie, if you're reading these, please just call us. Whatever happened, we can figure it out. My mother sent private texts. Sweetheart, please call. We're worried about you. If we did something to upset you, we can talk about it. Only my father remained radio silent after his initial voicemail. I knew that silence. It was the calm before a storm of rage. I turned off my phone again and went for another hike. The mountain air felt cleansing, washing away years of accumulated hurt with each deep breath. For dinner, I opened a bottle of wine similar to the one I'd brought to Sunday dinner and cooked myself a perfect steak. I ate on the porch, watching stars appear in a sky untainted by city lights. The next morning brought more messages. My family had been forced to book a hotel for the night. They had tried unsuccessfully to reschedule the cruise. The airline had charged them for new tickets. The total cost of their non-vacation was mounting. Dad had finally broken his silence with a single text. When I find you, we are going to have a serious conversation about what you've done. It wasn't a threat, not exactly, but the implication was clear. I should be afraid, but strangely, I wasn't. For the first time in my life, I felt completely in control of the situation. They had shown me exactly how little I meant to them. I had simply returned the favor. I spent the remaining days hiking, reading books I'd been meaning to get to, and sleeping better than I had in years. Occasionally, I checked the messages, watching as their anger cycled through confusion, rage, bargaining, and finally, as they returned home cruiseless. A somber reckoning. The final message came from my mother the day before I was set to return to Boston. We're home now. Whatever happened, whatever we did, we need to talk as a family. Please come over on Sunday. I didn't respond, but I knew I would go. Not for them, but for me. It was time to say all the things I'd been holding back for 28 years. I pulled into my parents' driveway at exactly noon on Sunday, 1 week after the infamous dinner and 3 days after they had returned from their non-cruise. My hands were steady on the steering wheel, my breathing calm and measured. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say, but I knew from experience that family confrontations rarely go according to script. All 3 cars were already there: Dad's truck, Mom's sedan, and Rebecca's flashy convertible that she could barely afford the payments on. They were waiting for me. Probably had been for hours. Planning their approach, deciding who would play good cop and who would bring the hammer down. I knocked rather than using my key. A small but meaningful gesture that said, I no longer consider this my home. Mom opened the door, her face a mixture of relief and apprehension. Allie, thank goodness. Come in. Everyone's in the living room. The tension in the living room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Dad sat in his recliner, face carefully neutral but knuckles white where he gripped the armrests. Rebecca perched on the edge of the sofa, arms crossed defensively. Only Kyle, slouched in the corner armchair, offered a small nod of acknowledgement. Sit down, Allison, Dad said. His voice controlled. I remained standing. I'll stand, thanks. Fine. Do you have anything you want to say for yourself? I had to suppress a bitter laugh. Of course. He would start by putting me on the defensive. Classic dad move. Actually, I do, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. But first, I'd like to hear what you have to say. About last Sunday's dinner. About telling me to my face that I'm not real family. Rebecca rolled her eyes. Oh my God, is that what this is about? You ruined our entire vacation because your feelings got hurt. Rebecca, Mom cautioned, then turned to me. Honey, no one meant to hurt your feelings. It was just a joke that didn't land well. A joke, I repeated flatly. So when Dad said the cruise was for a real family, he was joking? When you all laughed at me for thinking I was included, that was just good-natured fun. Dad cleared his throat. You're twisting what happened. Yes, we had already decided the cruise was just for the four of us. Your mother and I are celebrating our anniversary. And we wanted our children with us. Your children, I said. Interesting choice of words. Don't put words in my mouth, Allison. You know what I meant. Do I? Because from where I'm standing, it seems pretty clear. You used me for my professional connections and discount, had me spend hours of my personal time arranging your perfect family vacation, and then humiliated me when I assumed I'd be included. You could have just asked if you were invited instead of assuming, Rebecca interjected. I turned to her, no longer bothering to mask my anger. Why would I need to ask? I was literally planning the trip. Every cabin, every excursion, every special dinner, I arranged it all. Who plans an entire vacation they're not part of? We appreciated your help, Mom said softly. We should have been clearer about the arrangements. Clearer? Mom, you all laughed at me. Do you have any idea how that felt? Kyle spoke for the first time. She's right. That was pretty messed up. We did laugh. Rebecca shot him a venomous look. Whose side are you on? I'm not taking sides, Kyle said. But if we're going to work this out, we need to be honest about what happened. Dad stood up suddenly. Enough of this. What you did was completely disproportionate to whatever perceived slight you're claiming. You cost us thousands of dollars. You deliberately sabotaged a family vacation. That's not the behavior of a mature adult. And excluding your daughter from a family cruise while using her to plan it is. I countered. Let me ask you something, Dad. When's my birthday? He blinked, thrown by the change of subject. What? My birthday. When is it? It's in April. It's March 18th. I'll be 29 this year. You've gotten it wrong 3 years running. I turned to my mother. Mom, what was my final GPA in college? She frowned. I don't see what this has to do with. 3.95. I graduated summa cum laude while working 2 jobs. You didn't come to my graduation because Rebecca had a minor outpatient procedure scheduled for the same day. That wasn't minor. Rebecca protested. I had my wisdom teeth out. Kyle, I continued, when was the last time you called me just to talk? Not because you needed advice or help with something. He had the grace to look ashamed. I don't know. I took a deep breath. This isn't about one dinner or one cruise. It's about a lifetime of being treated as an afterthought. Of being expected to show up, help out, provide support, and then quietly accept whatever scraps of attention you deign to throw my way. The living room fell silent. Outside, a neighbor's lawnmower droned in the summer heat. You have no idea who I am, I continued, my voice quieter now. You've never tried to know me. I've spent my entire life trying to earn a place in this family, and it's never been enough. Dad's face had flushed a deep red. That is absolutely unfair. We've always treated you kids equally. I laughed, a sound without humor. Equal? Rebecca crashes her car texting while driving, and you buy her a new one. I work overtime for 6 months to save for graduate school application fees. And you tell me I should have planned better when I mention how expensive they are. That's different, Dad sputtered. It's always different when it's me, I said. Different rules. Different expectations, different treatment. A door slammed somewhere nearby, and we all jumped. Through the window, I could see our next-door neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, standing on her porch, clearly listening to the raised voices carrying through the open windows. Mom noticed too and moved to close the window. Let's all calm down, she said, her voice strained. Fighting like this isn't solving anything. I didn't come here to fight, I said. I came to finally tell the truth. And the truth is, you've made me feel like an outsider in my own family for as long as I can remember. Sunday dinner was just the final straw. Rebecca stood up, her face contorted with anger. So you decided to punish us all? To waste Dad's money and ruin Mom's anniversary? God, you're pathetic. playing the victim while acting like a complete psycho. Rebecca, Mom gasped. But Rebecca wasn't finished. You've always been jealous of me. Always trying to make yourself look better by tearing me down. Well, guess what? No one's buying your poor little Allie act anymore. You showed everyone exactly who you are with this stunt. I felt strangely calm in the face of her rage. You're right about one thing, I said. I did show everyone who I am. Someone who's finally done being your doormat. I turned to face all of them. Here's what's going to happen now. I'm going to walk out that door. You can either reflect on the pattern of behavior that brought us to this point, or you can continue pretending I'm the problem. But either way, I'm done accepting less than I deserve from the people who are supposed to love me most. Dad stepped forward, his expression hardening. If you walk out that door, don't expect to be welcomed back with open arms. Actions have consequences, Allison. Yes, they do, I agreed. That's precisely the lesson I was trying to teach you. As I turned to leave, Kyle surprised me by standing up. Allie, wait. I paused, hand on the doorknob. You're right, he said simply. About all of it. We've treated you like crap, and I'm sorry. Rebecca made a disgusted sound. Unbelievable. But Kyle ignored her. I never realized. I never thought about how it all looked from your side. I should have. His unexpected acknowledgement nearly broke my composure. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Will you at least think about talking again? He asked. Not today, but sometime? I'd like that, I managed to say. And then I walked out, closing the door gently behind me, the sound of renewed arguing already rising behind me. As I got into my car, I noticed Mrs. Patterson still on her porch, not even pretending not to watch the drama unfold. I gave her a small wave as I backed out of the driveway. I had said what I needed to say. The rest was up to them. The first week of silence was exactly what I expected. No calls, no texts, no emails. The family group chat remained dormant, as if frozen in time on the day of their failed trip. I returned to work, explaining to my curious colleagues that my personal leave had been restorative. It wasn't entirely a lie. Standing up for myself had felt like shedding a skin I'd outgrown. My boss, Diane, pulled me aside on my first day back. Everything okay, Allie? That time off was pretty sudden. Family emergency, I said vaguely. All sorted now. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. Well, if you need anything, my door's open. I thanked her and returned to my desk, wondering if my father had called the agency during my absence. If he had, company policy would have prevented anyone from discussing client bookings with him without my authorization. By the second week, small cracks appeared in the wall of silence. Kyle texted on Wednesday, "Hey, just checking in. Hope you're doing okay." I waited a day before responding. "I'm fine. Thanks for asking." He replied almost immediately. "Can we grab coffee sometime?" Just us. I agreed to meet him that weekend at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown far from our parents' neighborhood. Kyle looked different somehow when he walked in, less confident, more thoughtful. He ordered for both of us, remembering my preference for oat milk instead of regular. A small detail that surprised me. So, he said after we'd settled at a corner table, that was quite a Sunday. I couldn't help but smile. Which one? The dinner or the aftermath? Both. He wrapped his hands around his mug. Things are pretty tense at home. I imagine they would be. Rebecca's on the warpath. She's telling everyone who'll listen that you had some kind of psychological break. Mom's torn up about everything. And Dad. He trailed off. Dad's furious. I finished for him. Kyle nodded. He had to put the cruise charges on a different credit card. The timing messed with some business expenses he had planned. He's talking about legal action, but I think he's just blowing off steam. The mention of legal action should have worried me, but it didn't. Any action would require him to explain why his travel agent daughter sabotaged his vacation. Not a great look for him. That's what I told him. Kyle took a sip of his coffee. For what it's worth, I've been thinking about what you said. About how we've treated you. You weren't wrong. I stayed silent. Waiting. I never really saw it before, but once you pointed it out, I couldn't stop seeing it. The way Rebecca always gets special treatment. The way your accomplishments get downplayed. Even the birthday thing. Dad's never forgotten my birthday. Or Rebecca's, I added. No, never hers. He set down his mug. I'm sorry, Allie. I've been a shitty brother. His apology, simple and direct, caught me off guard. Thank you for saying that. I can't speak for the others, but I'm going to do better. Starting now. We talked for nearly 2 hours, really talked. Perhaps for the first time as adults. Kyle shared his own frustrations with our parents' expectations, how working for Dad had both benefits and serious drawbacks. I told him about my plans for the future, my hopes of eventually starting my own boutique travel consultancy. As we parted, he hugged me tightly. Don't give up on all of us just yet, okay? I couldn't make any promises, but I squeezed his arm in acknowledgement. The third week brought a tentative text from Mom. I made your favorite lemon bars today and thought of you. I miss you. Sweetheart. It was a peace offering of sorts, though notably lacking in any acknowledgement of her role in what had happened. Still, it was something. I responded with a simple, thank you, not closing the door, but not rushing to reopen it either. At work. Things took an unexpected turn when a colleague mentioned seeing a social media post from Rebecca. Isn't Rebecca Morgan your sister? She asked during lunch. She posted something about family betrayal and toxic relationships. People were commenting like crazy. I checked Rebecca's Instagram that evening and found the post in question a long, melodramatic screed about blood relations who stab you in the back and how some people will show their true colors when you least expect it. She had carefully constructed a narrative that cast her as the wounded party, never mentioning the dinner incident or their collective behavior. Several relatives had commented with sympathy and confusion. Our cousin Megan, always dramatic herself, had written, OMG, what happened? Call me. I closed the app without responding. Rebecca had always been skilled at rewriting history to suit her purposes. This was nothing new. What did surprise me was the email I received from my father's sister, Aunt Judith, later that week. Allie, I've been hearing concerning things about some family drama. Your cousin showed me Rebecca's social media posts, and frankly, they raised red flags for me. Without prying. I want you to know that if you need someone to talk to, I'm here. I've had my own complicated history with your father and recognize certain patterns. Love, Aunt Judith. I had always liked Aunt Judith, though we weren't particularly close. She and my father had a strained relationship, and she visited infrequently. Her message touched me deeply, someone from the family reaching out not to judge or demand, but simply to offer support. As October arrived, bringing with it the first hints of fall color, the question of holiday plans loomed on the horizon. Thanksgiving was always a major event at my parents' house, with extended family traveling from various states. Would I go this year? Could I face them all knowing what had happened? These questions weighed on me as I met my friend Sarah for dinner one evening. What are you going to do? She asked after I'd filled her in on the latest developments. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to just book a trip somewhere far away for the holidays. Avoid the whole mess. Sarah, who had witnessed years of my family's treatment, shook her head. Running away isn't your style, Allie. Neither is causing drama. What you did with the cruise, that wasn't about hurting them. It was about finally standing up for yourself. Try telling them that, I said wryly. Maybe you should, she suggested. Not with the expectation that they'll suddenly see the light, but for your own closure. Say what you need to say, set your boundaries, and then whatever they do with that information is on them. Her advice resonated with me. For too long, I'd been swallowing my truth to keep the peace. That approach had led me to the breaking point at Sunday dinner. Perhaps the way forward wasn't through more silence, but through honest communication, even if it wasn't well received. That night, I drafted an email to my parents, carefully outlining my perspective on our family dynamics and what I needed from them moving forward. I didn't send it immediately, letting it sit in my drafts folder while I considered each word. The following Sunday, nearly a month after the confrontation, my phone rang. It was my mother. Allie, she said when I answered, her voice trembling slightly. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I owe you an apology. A real one, not just for the cruise, but for a lot of things. I sat down, stunned into silence. I've never been fair to you. She continued. I've always expected more from you because you seemed so capable, so independent. I didn't realize that by not supporting you the way I supported Rebecca and Kyle, I was sending the message that you mattered less. You don't matter less, Allie. You never did. Tears welled in my eyes. Mom, please let me finish. I've talked with your father. He's still angry, but he's listening. We both are. If you're willing, we'd like to try to fix this. Really fix it, not just paper over it and pretend everything's fine. I wiped away a tear. I'd like that too. Will you come to dinner next Sunday? Just to talk? Kyle will be there too. What about Rebecca? I asked, knowing my sister would be the hardest hurdle. Mom sighed. She needs more time. But this isn't about her right now. This is about us hearing you, really hearing you, maybe for the first time. I agreed to dinner. A cautious optimism taking root alongside my wariness. As I hung up, I realized that regardless of how next Sunday went, something fundamental had shifted. I had found my voice, and I wasn't going to lose it again. 6 months after the cruise that never was, I stood in my parents' kitchen, helping my mother prepare Easter dinner. Spring sunshine streamed through the windows, highlighting the new family photos she had recently framed and hung, including several of me that had previously been absent from the wall display. Allie, can you check if the rolls are done? Mom asked, stirring the gravy. I opened the oven and peeked inside. Few more minutes, I think. So much had changed since that first Sunday dinner back in October. The road to repair had been neither straight nor smooth, but we had traveled it together, step by painful step. Kyle had become my strongest ally, consistently calling out old patterns when they emerged and creating space for me in family conversations. Our relationship had deepened beyond anything I'd thought possible, evolving from distant siblings to genuine friends. Mom had shown surprising commitment to change. Our weekly coffee dates had become a cherished ritual, a time for honest conversation without the pressure of the full family dynamic. She had started therapy, something I never imagined she would do, and occasionally shared insights from her sessions about her own childhood and the patterns she had unconsciously perpetuated. Dad had been the most resistant, his pride wounded by both my actions and the subsequent family upheaval. But even he had slowly, grudgingly, begun to acknowledge his role in our dysfunctional family system. The turning point came when he helped me move to a new apartment in January, spending a full Saturday carrying boxes and assembling furniture without a single complaint. As we sat exhausted on my new couch that evening, he had awkwardly patted my knee and said, "You've done well for yourself, Allie. I should have told you that more often." It wasn't a grand apology, but from my father, it was monumental. Rebecca remained the holdout. She had attended family gatherings sporadically, her behavior alternating between cold silence and passive-aggressive jabs. But even she had shown small signs of growth. Last month, she had actually asked about my work instead of immediately launching into stories about her own life. Baby steps, but steps nonetheless. "Everyone's here," Kyle announced, poking his head into the kitchen. "Dad's carving the ham." Mom and I carried the side dishes to the dining room, where Dad stood at the head of the table, carving knife in hand. Rebecca sat scrolling through her phone, but put it away as we entered. Aunt Judith, invited at my request and welcomed by my parents in a gesture of reconciliation, was arranging place settings. "Everything looks wonderful," Aunt Judith said, squeezing my shoulder as I set down a bowl of roasted vegetables. As we took our seats, I noticed something different about the table arrangement. Previously, I had always been placed at the far end, sometimes even at the added card table when space was tight. Today, I was seated directly to my father's right, the position traditionally reserved for honored guests or favored family members. Dad cleared his throat. "Before we start, I'd like to say something." He looked uncomfortable but determined. "This past year hasn't been easy for our family. We've had to face some hard truths about ourselves and how we've treated each other. Rebecca shifted in her seat, but remained silent. I haven't always been the father I should have been, Dad continued. Especially to you, Allie. I played favorites. I made you feel less important. I'm not good at apologies, but I am sorry. I blinked back tears, nodding my acknowledgement. We're planning another cruise, he announced. For Thanksgiving week. All of us together. A proper family vacation. He looked directly at me. Allie, we'd like you to help plan it, not because we need your discount, but because we want your input. If you want to come, that is. I'd like that, I said softly. The meal that followed was unlike any family dinner I could remember. We talked and listened, really listened, to each other. Kyle shared news about his promotion at work, having finally stepped out from under Dad's shadow to join a different construction company. Mom discussed her volunteer work at the local library. Even Rebecca managed to ask about my recent business trip to Chicago without making it about herself. After dinner, as we cleared the table, Rebecca approached me in the kitchen. I've been meaning to ask, she said, awkwardly handling a stack of plates. How did you do it? The cruise thing. Technically, I mean. I smiled slightly. Professional secret. She rolled her eyes, but without the usual venom. Fair enough. It was impressive, actually. Not that I'm condoning it. Of course not. She hesitated, then added. I've been thinking about what you said. About how we've treated you. I'm not good at this stuff, but I know I've been selfish. And mean, sometimes. A lot of the time. Yes, you have. I agreed, not making it easier for her. I'm trying to be better, she said. It's just hard to change. It is, I acknowledged. But it's possible. I've changed too, you know. I'm not the same person who let herself be walked over for years. I've noticed, she said with a hint of her old smirk, but it faded quickly. For what it's worth. I like this version of you better. She stands up for herself. It wasn't a full apology, but from Rebecca, it was significant progress. Later, as we gathered in the living room for coffee and dessert, I found myself reflecting on the journey of the past 6 months. The cruise incident had been a flashpoint, a necessary disruption to patterns so entrenched none of us could see them clearly. It had been extreme, perhaps even disproportionate, but it had accomplished what years of subtle attempts at change had not. My family was far from perfect. We still had disagreements. Old habits sometimes resurfaced. But there was a new awareness now, a consciousness about our interactions that hadn't existed before. We were trying, all of us, in our own ways, and that effort itself was healing. As the evening wound down, Aunt Judith pulled me aside. I'm proud of you, she said quietly. It takes courage to demand better from the people who should have given you their best all along. Her words crystallized the lesson I had learned through this difficult journey. True family isn't defined by blood or obligation, but by mutual respect, genuine care, and the willingness to grow together. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and for those you care about, is to hold up a mirror to painful truths. I had spent years trying to earn love that should have been freely given. In finally standing up for myself, I had not only changed how my family saw me, but how I saw myself. The cruise they never took had led us all to uncharted waters, challenging, sometimes turbulent, but ultimately healing. As I drove home that night, I felt a sense of peace I had never known before. The past couldn't be changed, but the future was still unfolding. And for the first time, I was helping to chart its course. Have you ever had to take a stand against family members who treated you unfairly? What did you do, and how did it change your relationships? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about family dynamics, self-worth, and personal growth. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people we love the most.